folks. All right, here we go. Welcome to Larry the GM. I'm Larry the GM, LarryTheGM.com. We are going to talk about the article we posted this morning about the Houston Astros payroll. Now, guys, I've been doing this for several years, and I'll just tell you, I've usually gotten within a million or two, within a couple $1,000,000 of what I think the Astros payroll is, because in some cases it was clear that they were operating right against the competitive balance tax threshold. And so I know that my number's right because I had them right against the competitive balance tax threshold. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through my numbers. If I need to, I'll jump to the spreadsheet itself, but I think the spreadsheet as I posted it within the article is going to be just fine to talk from. A couple things are coming in now. This data that's in this article will be a living and changing number as things happen. Okay, so I want to start with that. We're going to change what's here in this article based on what happens. I've made some assumptions. Well, I showed you what it is right now, and I've made some assumptions what I think is most likely to happen, and then we can talk about what the ramification of that is. So really, the data for this article, and remember where we start everything, guys, is start all issues in the Astros off season with the off season outline. Okay, and you're gonna see like everything that as we go through, we'll post a link, and it'll probably say link there. So that article that I started with, and I'll go back to, is right here. What is the Astros payroll situation? And talk a little bit about what that article includes. Within that article, we also went down the schedule of events or off-season critical dates. Within that schedule, we had this article. These Astros became free agents. Who do you think will be back? I'm going to talk about that one again real briefly. And there's a video that it's in the edit chamber right now, and I'll get that out and post it within that article. But we're going to start a little bit with that, but we referenced that within this article, and I don't want to get everybody lost in all the article talk. Okay, we reference who the Astros became free agents as we work through the payroll thing. So let's talk about, like, this is the article. The Astros became free agents on Sunday, and I labeled them who's likely to be back, and then also there's some options, and there's also where we talk about there's some tender decisions that the Astros need to make. And summarize, we left this article believing that the Astros would bring back Brantley, they would probably bring back Gurriel, depending on his health situation, and then they will bring back Verlander with the potential consequences. Okay, so that's that, and you can read more a little bit why I believe what I believe related to that. But what does that mean for the payroll? Well, let's start back essentially before that article, with the situation for the payroll for the Astros. The yellow line here means it's a player option for Justin Verlander. The current player option he faces, and I think he may already have declined this. He's going to decline it, whether he formally, I think he has $25 million for 2023. That's not going to happen. Then Trey Mancini and the Astros both have an option related to his contract. I believe potentially both sides may decline this option. I think Mancini is going to definitely decline it because I think he's going to think he can make more than $10 million a year, and he's going to want more than just a 1-year deal. Now, it would be fascinating to me if both sides took this option, because I'm not sure the Astros really want to invest $10 million in Trey Mancini right now, just because of the way 2022 played out. The other option that the club has is Will Smith, and That's not going to happen. It's a $13 million option, and the club's not going to accept that option. Okay, so then you've got three players that became free agents on Sunday. So we talked about it in that previous article: Michael Brantley, Yuri Gurriel, Christian Vasquez. Then you've got some arbitration and these are the arbitration guys that will need to be tendered or offered, that the team will offer to go to them with arbitration. The team can bounce out of that. I'm going to talk about two of those players. I think the team is going to choose not to. All right. So when you add up all these numbers, now what's important in these numbers is what is listed as their AAV. And I'm not going to get all the dynamics of AAV versus what their salary is, but you can see, like, in a year, this year, Jordan Alvarez, who has a $115 million contract, his actual payroll number is about $7.8 million, but his AAV, which is the average annual value across these contract years, 6-year contracts, is 19.2. That we're paying from the from a CBT, competitive balance threshold calculation, that Jordan Alvarez's number is 19.2. Now, why that's important is there'll be years like Alex Bregman signed a 5-year extension, which was for $100 million, that in the early years was much lower than that, just like Alvarez's will be this year. But now his is at his payroll number, the money, the check that the Astros will actually send out to Alex Bregman is 30.5, but his AAV number is 20. So don't get lost necessarily in the payroll numbers when understanding that these teams have there's consequences to the competitive balance tax. We'll talk more about that as the season progresses, but there are consequences, or reasons, and those consequences get progressively more as you go over the different thresholds. So what is the threshold in 2022 is $233 million, right? Just remember that, 233. So if you look at all these numbers and the AAV numbers, and these are um projected arbitration numbers for the various players. And this is based on historical practices, where they are. You may think, why is Farmer Valdez so cheap? Well, he's an ARB1 player. And so it's his first year of arbitration. Those numbers get progressively higher with the higher number of years in arbitration. So um, you'll see these numbers go up. You'll see that there are some buyout numbers that the Astros have for Pedro Baez and Will Smith. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of numbers that most people do not factor in these calculations. I don't want to go into every single one of these, but for example, there's these $3 million for the buyouts that needs to be included into their competitive threshold number. There's about $10.8 million for players that are not eligible for arbitration. They're pre-arb, that they'll be on the payroll. There's about $2.5 million for 40-man roster slot players that are gonna be playing in the minor leagues. There's about $16.5 million for bonuses and other players' benefits that get paid. And then I think this is new this year. I have to go figure out exactly what this line is referencing, but there's a payment into the $50 million pre-arbitration bonus pool that they created as far as the CBT process, and the Astros are going to have to pay about $1.7 million of that. So, all right, this first number of $204 million is based on no decision related to Mancini and no decision related to Verlander and their options. Okay, that number is probably higher than you've heard anybody else tell you that the number is. As of probably Sunday, that was the number. But I'm telling you, that's what their CBT number really is when you factor in a bunch of these numbers that most people don't think about. So let's go back to what we said in that previous article, which was, these players are coming back, these players are not. Verlander coming back at 1 year, a 2-year deal, but it's actually going to be probably what the rumor mill says is going to be structured as a 1-year deal with a 1-year player option, which is similar to what his deal was this year, and he's opting out from the player option. So there's expectations that it's going to be a $40 million 1-year deal plus a $40 million player option for 2024. That's the number I've heard. Okay. And I gave you a matrix of numbers that possibly could be in that previous article, and whether or not I thought Verlander would take the contract, or the Astros would take the contract. 40 million for essentially 2 years. I think it's in that territory that I don't know that either side. I don't think the Astros are going to be thrilled about paying Justin Verlander $40 million. And I don't think Justin Verlander is really that thrilled about only getting a 2-year deal when he believes he's going to pitch to 45. But that's probably a deal that both sides take, and it's probably right at that sweet spot. Michael Brantley's a little more challenging. So I believe his number was 16 million last year in 2022. I believe that they're going to talk with Michael, and Michael Brantley's been essentially saying, I'm coming back. I know I'm going to, essentially almost framing like, I know I got to take a pay cut. I know I may not be a full-time player. All these sorts of things. He just knows that he wants to come back to the Astros. I believe that they're going to work out a deal with Michael Brantley for a 1-year deal. Maybe it's a 1 year with a club option for a second year, and that's at a roughly $10 million standpoint. Now it might be 12, it might be 13. I think it's going to be on the lower side of that, because I think they're going to talk about Michael as our intention with you, Mr. Brantley, is that we're not going to play you every day. We're going to play you against, if there's a lefty, you're definitely not playing. If it's a really hard righty that you may not be able to catch up to the fastball, or I don't know how they're going to necessarily frame it, or if you've played too many days in a row, we're going to give you an off day. And at the end of the day, I think Michael Brantley is going to be about a halftime player, and they're going to say, we want to pay you like a halftime player. Now, there may be incentive clauses and such like that build in if he's more than a halftime player. That may be how they figure this out and get to a number that's maybe even looks closer to 16 if he's a full-time player. I think it's really going to be targeting at about a $10 million number. I think there could be a very similar situation with Gurriel. I think they're going to talk to Gurriel. They're going to show him the sort of numbers we showed you guys in the why Yuli was great in the ALDS, where Yuli played really, really well, even all year. When a year that I was quite honestly, frankly, like disappointed, and let you guys know that with Gurriel's performance, when you put it all together at the end of the year and you kind of figured it out working backward from the postseason, why is he so good now in the postseason? It's because it wasn't postseason Yuli, it was rested Yuli. Yuli got a lot of rest in the postseason. For every series, there was rest. And he didn't get much rest during the regular season. So I could see a scenario where it essentially says, hey, Yuli, we're going to play you only 80 to 100 games. If you play more, then you'll make more. But that's our intention. Now, quite honestly, is Dusty willing to play a Yuli Gurriel only to 80 to 100 games? I don't know. And I think that's one of the disappointing thing about 22 is I would have loved to have seen Yuli actually be deployed with that sort of model and see how well it worked. I believe we're not going to necessarily talk about the whole roster here as we talk about the payroll decisions, because some of them are going to come later. But I can see a scenario where there's some younger guys that could play first base, and that'd be the way to go. I believe the Astros will buy out Mancini's $10 million option. It's unfortunate, but I believe that's where we're at. I believe the Astros will pay the $1 million buyout for Will Smith's option, and so there we go. All right, so they now also from that tender section where I said, hey, do they want to give Phil Maton $3 million or $2.5 million? I think they're going to say, given the status, even knowing that a few of our players like Montero are leaving the bullpen, that we still got enough bullpen arms that we would, yeah, it would essentially Yuli play. Well, Yuli play against lefties, Yuli play against righties, but almost a load management sort of situation. Um, but here we go. Phil Maton, $2.5 million. I think they're going to choose to say we got enough arms and we got enough young arms in our minors, like a Seth Martinez, that we're willing to let Phil Maton walk. I will say, relative to Josh James and the rest of the guys on this list, I think they will be added. I don't think Blake Taylor will, just because I just think. I mean, you say it's only $800,000, and so I'm not gonna make a big deal of it, guys. They may bring Blake Taylor back, but I think the bigger issue actually for both Phil Maton and Blake Taylor, and we're going to see this eventually when we get to mid-December, and we're trying to figure out a 40-man roster relative to um, relative to the Rule 5 draft. That you're gonna have both those players not be tendered because they may want those roster spots. All right, so that makes the payout a little bit higher. Hi, Joels. Thanks for joining. All right, so there we are. Those are the decisions. So those are my decisions. So Justin Verlander at 40 million, Michael Brantley at 10 million, Yuli Gurriel at 6 million, Trey Mancini not the option not being picked up, Will Smith not the option not being picked up, Christian Vasquez not signed, Phil Maton non-tendered, Blake Taylor non-tendered, and you do all that and you get to about $222 million. That's versus a CBT of 233. No one else is telling you and framing to you like all these decisions that are essentially baked into the year. Are the Astros already at 222 million? We've got people out there saying, "Well, I think they're going to get this guy, and they're spending like $60 million," and then like when I say, "Well, they don't have that much money," they act like I'm crazy. It's like, okay, I think the Astros have $11 million for first competitive balance tax threshold. I believe that if they go and exercise this contract with Justin Verlander at 40 million, that they know that they can't really stay under the first CBT, but they're really going to strive to be under the next CBT of 253. And if they're in that range, we really should look at Jim Crane as like Jim is spending his money. He's doing what he said he would do relative to the payroll of this team. Now we can argue whether or not it makes a lot of sense that Justin Verlander is being paid $40 million. I don't really want to get into that. I mean, there'll be plenty of time to discuss that if that actually happens. If the Verlander deal does not happen, if the Astros essentially get money whipped, and that if there's no Justin Verlander deal in the next 3 days, well, they still have a mutual. I mean, they have an exclusive window to come up with something with Verlander, and he gets out to the free agent market, which he may do. That 40 million may not be enough, guys. You may have like Seattle Mariners or some other team that really wants that. The Los Angeles Angels could come in and say, we're gonna pair up Justin Verlander with some of our pitchers and with Ohtani and really go to war with the Astros and other teams in the American League West. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay, I'm just telling you that's what the number is if you get Verlander for $40 million, and there are ramifications of that, and I think those ramifications are things that people really don't want to talk about. So what does it mean? So it means that that window for free agents that we're gonna, one of the next steps is actually talking about like what are the biggest needs that this team has if these decisions are made. What are the big decisions? Now you can say, well, left field doesn't feel like that big of a decision if you have Michael Brantley and you have Alvarez that can split time there. Maybe first base. Well, it's first base a big problem if you got Yuli Gurriel. And maybe the answer is, well, I need somebody that can do both, or figure that out as a bench player, as a part time starter in both those places, while the other two are part time players. I think it's going to be really fascinating. Like, I want the Astros to make these decisions first. I want the Astros actually, if Gurriel and Brantley are back, it's going to limit my focus a little bit, much more focus into what the Astros are going to actually do with the additional payroll room. Does that make sense, folks? Does that make sense? Um, right. So what we'll talk about is, these players that will go beyond this window. Are they going to offer any of them the qualifying offer? And I actually need to do, just to be fully transparent with you guys, I'm trying to do this step by step. I need to go figure out if they can't. I know that the qualifying offer rules are slightly different than they were 2 years ago, even. I'm not even 100% sure that there's any. I don't. I think the answer to this is no. There's no player that they can really offer the qualifying offer to that they would even consider it. I think the player that they would potentially do that is Verlander. I'm not even sure they can. So I need to go look at the rules related to that. If somebody knows, you can tell me right now. All right, so the data here is coming from Fangraphs, the roster resource page guide, and as that gets updated, or as we see things happen, we will update this. I will also double back to Sport Tracks and some of the other sites and make sure that the numbers there aren't dramatically different. And if they are, I'll figure out what the issue there is. All right, questions about the payroll. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to get in your questions. But before anybody leaves, what I want to tell you is please like this video. Please join the YouTube channel, subscribe on the YouTube channel, subscribe on the website, and like the postings that we have on the website. That'd be nice, and also join the Twitter. I got two Twitters, one for the site that's a little more, you get nicer, Larry, on that one because it's representing the site. You come to my personal website or my personal Twitter, you're gonna have to deal with salty Larry sometimes. Just warning you. I don't have time for, because that's the one I spend more of my time on. The site ones where I'm just posting links to the articles. But if you come to Larry the GM man, me, um, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna waste my time with a bunch of opinions that just are totally off the wall, and that. But please, guys, let's have fun together. Let's enjoy this off season. I'm here for you guys. We'll figure out every step of the way. All right, last call for questions. Having not seen any, all I can say again is please like the video, like the YouTube channel, and enjoy the articles. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.